Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today we're going to be talking about the 20th anniversary of the Sega Dreamcast. But first, let's go ahead and light a candle for the birthday occasion here. We have a nice French vanilla. I don't actually have a birthday cake one. This is a thing I used to do. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but there was a time. All right, so yeah, it's the Dreamcast 20th anniversary. So every year on the Dreamcast birthday, which is the North American birthday, September 9th, 1999, I always make a video kind of talking about what the last year for the Dreamcast has been like. And I used to do this thing where I would put a candle in it, but I kind of got away from doing that. But hey, we're bringing it back because it's the 20th anniversary. So yes, for those who don't know, the Sega Dreamcast is 20 years old today in North America. Now, it's already been it already celebrated its 20th anniversary, actually last year in Japan, because it came out there in 1998. And it comes, the 20th anniversary in Europe is just like a month away or so. But the North American anniversary, which is the one that's the most commonly celebrated just because of the infamous marketing around that, 99.99. It was like this really big deal back then. It was really, really cool. Now, I know there's a whole lot of people doing videos about this, and because it's such a big number, 20th anniversary, it's just kind of fascinating that even Sega is partaking in this. I know that they have a live stream today. At the time I post this video, there's going to be a live stream. Sega of America is going to be hosting one. I know later Sega of Europe is going to be doing one as well. So the thing that to me though about the Dreamcast that's always been fascinating is it's my favorite console of all time. It was really since it came about, and I've always loved it, but it was always kind of unique because there aren't that many consoles like it. And when I say that, I mean, if you take all of its contemporary rivals, none of them still have new software coming out. A lot of older stuff, does through, the same type of idea where, independent developers and publishers can make games for it. But when it comes to CD-based consoles, that's not very common, particularly ones of this era. So the Dreamcast is unique because it still gets new games. In fact, I'm sitting here with 10. These 10 games all came out within the last calendar year, since September 9th of 2018. Well, sort of. There's one exception in there, but we'll get to it when we get to it. But it's interesting. If you're unaware, the Dreamcast, when it came out, it was capable of supporting 3 different types of disc formats. One was GD-ROMs, which stood for Gigabyte Disc ROM, and that was its disc format for video games. There was also the music CD function, but there was a third one that people didn't really know much about initially called Mill CD. Now, Mill CD was basically just music CDs, but it had extra lines of data in it. And the idea was that if you had one of these compatible music CDs with Mill CD data on it, then the console would do extra things. Specifically, like for karaoke devices, you'd put it in and there'd be some sort of visualizations and stuff like that. Like, that's really all it was intended for. In fact, I don't even think it was ever used outside of Japan officially by Sega. But that exploit is eventually what led to piracy on the console, and not that that was the thing that killed it, though people think it was. It was a factor, but it really was kind of a small factor. But that thing, that element of it, is actually the reason the console is able to survive now. Is because there's nothing stopping them from making brand new games using the Mill CD exploit from the get-go, which is fantastic. And as a result, every independent game that's come out for the console since 2003 with Feet of Fury has used that. And so this year, I think this might actually be the most games we had for the Dreamcast in one year since it was, culturally relevant, let's say. So I just wanted to kind of go through them and just talk about each one a little bit. Now, I've done videos on every single one of these games, so if any of them sound interesting, you can go ahead and check them out. And every single one of these games is published by Josh Prod. One of them kind of is and kind of isn't, but the rest of them are all Josh Prod. Now, if you're not familiar, Josh Prod is a development company that run by a guy named Phil, who basically has just been going around collecting games for one reason or another, buying up the rights, licensing, etc., and porting games over to the Dreamcast. He also puts them on other platforms, but the Dreamcast is where he's passionate, and I respect him for that. He's also basically the guy keeping it alive at this point, so if you can, go out and support his releases. I know they come out on Video Games New York. You can check out their website as well. And also shout out to Video Games New York as well, because if you were in the New York area, I was at a convention called AVGC, and we did a 20th anniversary panel on September 7th. AVGC Video Games New York sponsored the panel, and what I mean by that is they gave us 4 of these games to give away for free to people who were there. And at the same time, Game Realms in Burbank California, also hosted a cool 20th anniversary special with Corey Marshall, the voice of Ryo, of Hazuki from Shenmue, as like the host of it. So we did this splitting duties thing this year, and it's really very cool to see that there's so much love going into the Dreamcast still. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these releases. Now, the first one up that I want to talk about is a game called Battle Crust. Now, this was a cool game. It was the first shoot 'em up on the Dreamcast in quite some time. There was a time where that was like a joke with the Dreamcast. Like every single game that came out was a shoot 'em up. And I think it was mostly because of how easy these things are to develop relatively, and how universal they are. You don't really need, there's not much of a language barrier to understand how to play them. They're not all that demanding. And, from an engineering standpoint, it's not that hard to make one. So I think that's kind of why they kept producing these for so long, because it had the widest berth of appeal. But it became just too commonplace to keep getting shoot 'em up. So this was the first one in quite some time, and it was actually pretty good. This is also the exception on our list of the 10 games. This one technically came out right before the birthday last year, but the problem with that is that most people didn't receive it until after the birthday, so you can kind of decide it that way. But technically, yes, it came out before the previous birthday, before the 19th birthday. But that said, Battle Crust is a cool game, and you should check it out and check out all the videos on it, or a video on it. I did one, but again, did videos on all these things. But sticking with that genre, and I covered this one very recently, there's a game called Armed 7. This is debatably my favorite game in this whole batch. This is also a shoot 'em up. And this one was cool because it was, it has two modes. It has the original mode, and it also has the new Dreamcast Enhanced mode, which I kind of touched on this before. But one thing that Josh Prod is known for doing is finding games he likes and then buying up the rights and then bringing them out and then enhancing them and making several changes. So in this case, he gave you the original version as well as the new Enhanced Dreamcast version. And this one was a lot of fun. I really had a good time with this, so I advise you guys go ahead and check that out. Now, here we have a big trilogy of stuff. So he was a big fan of the series Flashback. Now, Flashback, I already talked about, before. It's this kind of a puzzle adventure type of game. I'm sure a lot of you know it. It's a very infamous franchise. But he also managed to get all these games that are either sequels or very, very similar. There's Another World, Out of This World HD, which is very, very similar to that series. And it plays very much the same, but again, he did all sorts of enhancements and upgrades and things like that that you can check out. I wasn't a huge fan of this particular game, that or the Escapee. They were both, because they're just not, both of them are like that. They're both those type of, trial by error puzzle kind of adventure games. And I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm not patient enough anymore, but I don't know, I did not like these as much, but it's cool to have them as part of the genre. Then he had the direct sequel to Flashback, which was this, Fade to Black Flashback, which was actually originally a PS1 game. It was also on PC as well. This is probably one of the more, given the low budget that these indie games tend to work with, this is probably one of the more visually impressive ones. It's still not what the Dreamcast, is capable of producing with the right, teams behind it, but for a shoestring budget and a pre-existing game, of course, it's not bad. It actually looks quite nice. So this one was a lot more fun, though. The controls in this, I remember being very, very kind of difficult. He also got a couple of other games that he brought out that were at one time created for other platforms. Both of these were made for, this one was made for PC a long time ago, an indie game, and I know he's working on getting the sequel to this brought over. This is a game called Finding Teddy, which is another one of these type of puzzle games, but it's a little different. It's not, I don't know, it's kind of like, it's a little like Flashback and a little like Out of This World, but not nearly as stressful, in my opinion, in that it's basically a game where it's an open field of space, and you have to solve puzzles, and then every time you solve a puzzle wrong, you die, and you have to kind of restart. Basically trial by error until you kind of memorize the sequence. Again, I'm not a huge fan of these, but I did like the art style on this one a lot. This one, I just did a video. This is my previous video, actually. Magic Pockets. This was originally a game that came out on PC in like '91. It was also on Atari ST and Amiga stuff. It was an interesting platformer from back in the day. Good game, not great. There's better platformers, but that said, it was still pretty cool. And it's another welcome addition to the library. The other thing that he's been doing that's fascinating to me is he's been working with a company called Visco. Now, Visco was originally basically a Neo Geo developer. They made a lot of different stuff for that, the various hardware, whether it's the home console, the AES, the CD, or the MVS arcade cabinets. they made various games, and he cut a deal with them where he's basically been licensing out their library for use on the Dreamcast. They did Breakers, they did Gonryu, I think there was another one, but they've also been doing these. This one is their most recent one. This is a game called Captain Tamade. Now this game was also a shoot 'em up, another kind of like quirky one. People told me when I did my video that I didn't really play this all that right, so I'm going to revisit it because I guess I wasn't, I don't know, playing it correctly, but I found it to be very strange. Not bad, but strange. This game originally only came out on the MVS, but thanks to him, it now actually also has an AES release, and of course the Dreamcast release here, which is really very cool. But then this was one I thought was the most special, which was Bang Bang Busters. This game was also by Bisco, but was never released in the first place. He basically discovered it over there along with their team, and they decided, okay, we'll bring it out to the Dreamcast. And I think they also gave it an AES version, but originally it was meant for various Neo Geo hardware and just never came out. From what I remember, it's like an action puzzle type of game, and it was, you know, pretty cool from what I remember. But again, I did videos on all of these if you want to check them out. One of the winner here, though, in my opinion, as far as other than ARMS 7, which I think was really very special, was FX Unit Yuki, the Henshin engine. This game was, while this is the Josh Prod version, which was ultimately published by him, there is a non-Josh Prod version of this, where the game was made by Sarumaru and his team. They made this game as a labor of love originally for the PC Engine, and it's a platformer kind of devoted to that. And it's really a lot of fun, in my opinion. So it's really cool that we got to benefit from a Dreamcast version, and of course Josh Prod being willing to also publish it as well. I really think this one was a lot of fun. So I think it's very neat. You know, even if some of the games themselves are kind of like, some are good, some are okay, you know, some are not that great. You know, you'll get that with any sort of game console. But the fact that we're sitting here 20 years later after the launch, and we're talking about 10 new games for what, let's keep it real, is a dead console, or at least it's alive in like a zombie type of way. The fact that there's 10 new titles for it within a calendar year is insane. I mean, the Wii U didn't have that. The Wii U had one. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of fascinating, and it's awesome that we're still paying love and homage to this console, which is still my favorite console of all time, and likely always will be. I don't know if anybody's ever going to be able to top that. So I welcome the continued support from the Dreamcast community. I hope you guys will continue to support them. If you want to check any of these out, by all means, check out the links in the description to Video Games New York, or check out the videos I did on any of these if they sound interesting for one reason or another. And remember, tastes are different, you know what I mean? Like, when it comes to video games. So just because I didn't like those type of, you know, survival type of games, doesn't mean you won't. You might love them. That might be exactly your thing. It might be the genre that you've never tried that you end up just absolutely falling in love with. You got to try everything at least once and find that kind of stuff out. So yeah, that'll about do it. I want to thank you guys very much for watching this episode of Keep Dreaming, which I realize this is episode 149. How nice would it have been if it was episode 150? That would have been kind of cool. But yeah, 10 years into the videos, and we're at the 20th anniversary of the Dreamcast, which is like, but yeah, very cool. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you please, could you like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff, and make sure to check out when Sega does their official stream and all that stuff. And I'll see you all later. Oh, wait, we should also blow out the candle, right? Happy birthday, Dreamcast.